I still remember the exact moment my world shattered. There I was, standing frozen outside our living room, hand still gripping the doorknob as I overheard my father's proud voice. "With Julia's college fund, we've secured enough capital to launch immediately." My mother chimed in. "She doesn't need to know. We told her the market crashed and her money vanished." Just 12 hours earlier, they'd sat me down with tears in their eyes, telling me my college dreams were over because we lost everything, honey. Now they were clinking champagne glasses with my brother Adam and his business partners, gloating about his fully funded startup using my tuition money. In that moment, I knew family loyalty had its limits. What they didn't realize was that I'd already taken precautions that would change everything. Growing up in suburban Pennsylvania, I always believed my family was different from others. We seemed closer, more honest with each other. My parents, Richard and Donna Thompson, raised my brother Adam and me with what I thought was equal love and attention. Our modest two-story house was always filled with laughter and support, especially around the dinner table where we'd share our daily triumphs and failures. From an early age, I showed a knack for academics. While other kids played video games, I devoured books about business and finance. My teachers called me exceptionally gifted, especially with numbers. By 16, I was taking advanced placement classes and serving as treasurer for 3 school clubs. My guidance counselor said I had a remarkable mind for financial systems, which only fueled my passion further. When senior year arrived, I graduated at the top of my class with a GPA of 4.3. The acceptance letter from Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania felt like validation for all those late nights studying while friends were out partying. The partial merit scholarship they offered covered about 40% of the tuition, which was significant but still left a substantial amount to be paid. "Don't worry about a thing, Julia," my dad had said, squeezing my shoulder. "We've been saving for your college fund since you were in diapers. This is what it's there for." That fund represented years of my parents putting away money from every paycheck, plus contributions from grandparents on birthdays and holidays. It was earmarked specifically for my education, a fact my parents reminded me of whenever I achieved academically. "Keep up those grades," my mother would say. "Your college fund is growing, and we want you to attend the best school possible." My brother Adam had a different path. 4 years older than me, he'd struggled through high school with average grades and minimal effort. He attended the local community college for 3 semesters before dropping out to find himself. This finding process involved a series of odd jobs, failed entrepreneurial ventures, and long stretches of living in our parents' basement. Despite his spotty record, my parents never lost faith in him. "Adam just needs time to figure things out," they'd say. "He has such big ideas. One day they'll pay off, you'll see." I admired their unwavering support, though sometimes I wondered if they held Adam to the same standards they set for me. During my senior year, Adam announced he wanted to launch a tech startup focused on social media marketing automation. Though he had no background in programming or marketing, he spoke with such conviction that even I was impressed. Since business and finance were my strengths, I offered to help him create a business plan and financial projections for potential investors. We spent weeks working together in the evenings. I taught him about profit margins, operating costs, and return on investment. For the first time, we connected as adults rather than squabbling siblings. When he asked questions and actually listened to my answers, I felt respected for my knowledge rather than dismissed as his little sister. "You know, Jules," he said one night, after we finished a particularly complex financial model, "you're really good at this stuff. Maybe when my company takes off, you can come work for me." I laughed. "Thanks, but I have my own plans. Once I finish at Wharton, I'm heading for Wall Street, or maybe starting my own financial consulting firm." Working at the local bank part-time during senior year had opened my eyes to the power of smart financial management. While the job was entry-level, mainly handling customer service and basic transactions, I absorbed everything I could about banking operations. I befriended Margot, a senior financial advisor, who took me under her wing, explaining investment strategies and the importance of diversification. "Never put all your eggs in one basket," she advised, "and always have contingency plans for your contingency plans." Following her advice, I opened my own investment account with my modest savings from birthdays and part-time work. Nothing substantial, but enough to learn the basics of investing. By graduation, I'd grown my initial $2,000 to nearly $3,000 through careful conservative investments. My parents came from a background of financial struggle. My father worked as a sales manager at an office supply company, while my mother taught third grade at the local elementary school. They often spoke about their early days of marriage, living paycheck to paycheck, determined that their children would have more opportunities than they did. "We broke the cycle of struggle for you kids," my dad would say. "Your grandparents couldn't help us with college, but we made sure things would be different for you. That's why I never questioned the security of my college fund. It was the embodiment of their promise to give me a better future." The spring before I was set to begin college, I was floating on clouds. Everything was falling into place. My dorm assignment came through, placing me with a roommate who also planned to major in finance. I'd received my course schedule for the fall semester and already bought some of the textbooks secondhand to get a head start on reading. The future seemed bright and certain. Then came the text from my mother: "Family meeting tonight. Important news to discuss. Be home by 6. Something in her phrasing sent a chill through me. Family meetings were rare in our house, usually reserved for major announcements. The last one had been when my grandmother passed away 3 years ago. As I drove home from my bank job that evening, a sense of foreboding settled over me. I tried to rationalize it away. Maybe Adam had finally secured funding for his startup. Maybe Dad got the promotion he'd been hoping for. Maybe Mom decided to pursue that master's degree she'd always talked about. But deep down, I knew something was wrong and it would change everything. When I arrived home that evening, the atmosphere was heavy with tension. My parents sat at the dining table, faces drawn and serious. Adam slouched in a chair opposite them, examining his fingernails with unusual interest. "Julia, sit down, honey," my mother said, her voice gentle but strained. "We have some difficult news." My father cleared his throat, not quite meeting my eyes. "There's been a situation with our investments, including your college fund." My heart stuttered as he continued. "The market crashed in a specific sector where most of our retirement and your college money was invested," he explained, technical terms flowing smoothly. "We've lost almost everything overnight." My mother reached across the table to grasp my hand. "We lost everything, honey. The college fund is gone." The room seemed to tilt sideways. Gone? How could it be gone? I thought education funds were supposed to be in conservative investments. Dad shuffled some papers he'd brought to the table, financial statements with lots of red markings. "We moved some investments around last year trying to increase the returns before you started college. Our financial advisor suggested this opportunity that seemed very secure." "We're devastated," Julia, Mom said, tears welling in her eyes. "We've already spoken with the bank about remortgaging the house just to keep afloat." Adam finally looked up. "It's pretty bad, sis. Parents are in deep trouble." I sat there trying to process this information. My entire future planned with such care now hanging by a thread. "What about Wharton?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My parents exchanged glances. "We just can't make it work, sweetheart," Dad said. "Even with your scholarship, the remaining tuition is impossible now." "What about student loans? Or maybe I could defer for a year, work full-time, and save up." Mom shook her head. "The amount of debt you'd need to take on would be crippling. And with the job market so uncertain." "You should apply to state instead," Adam interjected. "It's cheaper, and their business program is decent enough." I felt a flash of irritation. State's program wasn't remotely comparable to Wharton, and Adam knew it. "Or community college for 2 years, then transfer," Dad suggested. "Many people take that route." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. For years, they'd encouraged me to aim for the top schools, promising financial support. Now suddenly, they were suggesting community college, as though my academic achievements meant nothing. "I need some time to think," I said, standing abruptly. "This is a lot to process." That night, I barely slept. Something about the situation didn't add up. My parents had always been conservative with money. The idea that they'd suddenly move my college fund into risky investments seemed completely out of character. The next morning, I called in sick to work and began looking into our family finances as much as I could. Since I was still listed as a dependent on my parents' taxes, I had limited legal access to their financial information. However, my job at the bank had taught me that public records could reveal a lot. First, I checked the county property records online. If my parents were remortgaging the house as they claimed, there should be some documentation of the process. I found nothing. The last mortgage activity was a refinance 3 years earlier when interest rates had dropped. Next, I scrutinized their behavior. Despite claiming financial ruin, neither seemed to be cutting back on expenses. Dad still golfed with his buddies on weekends. Mom still attended her weekly spa sessions. 2 days after our family meeting, I spotted a package from Nordstrom being delivered containing new designer shoes for my mother. People who had truly lost everything didn't buy $300 shoes. Most concerning was how they discouraged me from seeking alternative solutions. When I mentioned applying to schools with better financial aid packages, Dad said it was too late in the season. When I suggested working for a year to save money, Mom worried I'd lose momentum. Every path forward I proposed was met with reasons why it wouldn't work, except one: giving up on my dream school altogether. About a week after the devastating news, I was grabbing a snack from the kitchen late at night when I overheard Adam on the phone in the backyard. "Yeah, man, it's all coming together," he said, voice animated with excitement. "The investment came through, so we can start hiring developers next month. Parents really came through big time." Investment. What investment? If my parents had truly lost everything, how could they invest in anything? The next day, I did something I'd never done before. I waited until everyone left the house, then searched my parents' home office. Most financial documents were locked away, but they'd forgotten about the mail piled on the desk. Among the envelopes was a quarterly statement for an investment account I'd never seen before, opened just 3 months earlier. The statement showed a deposit of $84,000, almost exactly the amount that had been in my college fund. That night, I cried myself to sleep, not from sadness but from anger and betrayal. The people I trusted most in the world had lied to my face. They hadn't lost my college fund in a market crash. They had deliberately taken it from me. The next morning, I composed myself and went to work as usual. But instead of handling customer transactions, I spent my break researching how to protect myself financially. I needed to understand what was really happening with my family's money. As I was leaving work that evening, I literally bumped into Adam in the bank's parking lot. "What are you doing here?" I asked, surprised. He seemed equally startled to see me. "Just, setting up some business accounts." He quickly changed the subject. "Hey, have you decided about school yet? Mom and Dad really think state would be a good backup plan?" I smiled tightly, still figuring things out. As he walked away, I noticed the paper in his hand, an application for a business line of credit. Pieces were starting to come together, but I needed more information. That weekend, I heard my parents planning a dinner out with Adam to celebrate good news. They didn't invite me. Claiming a headache, I stayed home and used the opportunity to check Adam's laptop, which he often left at our house. The browser history revealed frequent visits to commercial real estate listings and searches for startup office space. There were email exchanges with website developers and consultations with marketing firms. None of these services were cheap. Most damning was an email draft addressed to a potential business partner. Initial funding secured through family investment. Ready to proceed with Phase 1. My family hadn't lost anything. They had simply decided my brother's business venture was more important than my education. The discovery of my parents' deception left me reeling, but I knew emotional reactions wouldn't help me now. I needed concrete evidence and a clear understanding of exactly what had happened to my college fund. My position at the bank gave me legitimate access to certain financial information systems, though I was careful to stay within legal and ethical boundaries. When customers applied for loans, we routinely verified their assets and tracked large money movements for security purposes. I used these same systems to investigate public records of business registrations. Within days, I found what I was looking for. A new LLC had been registered in our state just 2 months earlier, Nexus Marketing Solutions, with Adam Thompson listed as CEO. The business filing listed Richard and Donna Thompson as primary investors with a capital contribution of $85,000. $85,000. Almost exactly the amount that had been in my college fund. For years, my parents had assured me the money was specifically designated for my education. They had opened a 529 college savings plan in my name when I was 3 years old, adding to it consistently for 15 years. Such accounts have tax advantages precisely because they're earmarked for educational expenses. Using that money for anything else wasn't just morally questionable, it potentially had tax implications. I printed the business registration documents and tucked them away in my bag. That evening, I decided to confront my parents directly. "I know what happened to my college fund," I said, calmly, sitting them down at the kitchen table after dinner. "It wasn't lost in any market crash." My mother's face paled. My father's expression hardened. "What are you talking about, Julia?" he asked, voice steady, but eyes darting to my mother. I placed the business registration on the table. You invested my college money into Adam's startup, money that was specifically saved for my education. For a moment, silence hung heavily in the air. Then my father sighed deeply. You don't understand the complexity of these financial decisions, Julia. Then explain it to me, I challenged. Explain how my education fund legally ended up as investment capital in Adam's business. My mother interjected. We made the best decision for the family as a whole. Adam's business has potential to support all of us eventually. So, you decided my future was less important than his business venture, without even discussing it with me. Dad leaned forward, his tone shifting from defensive to accusatory. This attitude isn't helping the family during a difficult time. We need to pull together, not create more division. Division, I repeated incredulously. You stole my future and lied about it, and I'm creating division by asking questions. We did not steal anything, my mother snapped, color returning to her cheeks. That money belonged to us, not you. We always said it was for your college, but legally those accounts were in our names. Her words hit me like a physical blow. Years of your college fund conversations suddenly reframed as our money we might have given you. Dad softened slightly at seeing my expression. Look, Julia Adams' business is a sound investment. Once it takes off, there will be more than enough money to send you wherever you want to go. And when would that be? After I've missed enrollment deadlines, after I've lost my scholarship, after I've given up on my dreams. Neither had a good answer. Adam came home during our confrontation, immediately grasping the situation. Instead of showing remorse, he exuded confidence. Jules, you're looking at this all wrong, he said, dropping into a chair beside me. Once we launch, I'll need a financial manager. You'd be perfect for the role. Real-world experience is worth more than any degree. I stared at him in disbelief. You're offering me an entry-level job at your unproven startup instead of a Wharton education. He had the audacity to look offended. Most people would be grateful for such an opportunity. That night, I called my grandmother, my mother's mother, who lived 2 hours away in upstate New York. Though we weren't exceptionally close, she had always been kind and straightforward with me. Grandma, did you know about what happened with my college fund? I asked after exchanging pleasantries. Her long pause told me everything. Julia, dear, I had my suspicions, but your mother assured me it was a temporary situation. It's not temporary. They've invested it all in Adam's business. Another pause. This isn't the first time you know. What do you mean? When you were 12, you were selected for that prestigious summer science program in Boston, remember? Your parents said they couldn't afford the tuition, so you couldn't go. I remembered the disappointment vividly. It had been my first major academic recognition. That same summer, Grandma continued, they bought Adam his first car because, according to your mother, he needed it for his summer job. A job he quit after 3 weeks, as I recall. As we talked, Grandma revealed a pattern I'd been too young to recognize. Science camp canceled, but Adam got a car. Piano lessons discontinued, but Adam received expensive recording equipment for his brief interest in music production. Advanced math tutoring deemed too expensive, while Adam's third attempt at community college was fully funded. I should have said something sooner, Grandma said, regret evident in her voice. Your grandfather and I always noticed the disparity, but your mother became defensive whenever we mentioned it. After hanging up, I sat on my bed staring at the wall, processing this new understanding of my family dynamics. The favoritism toward Adam wasn't new. It was simply reaching its logical conclusion. The next morning, while checking my email before work, I noticed something unusual. An email notification appeared briefly on my mother's tablet, which she'd left charging on the kitchen counter. The subject line caught my attention: launch party invitations confirmed. When my parents left for work, I checked the tablet. The email contained details about a launch celebration for Nexus Marketing Solutions scheduled for the following week at an upscale venue in Philadelphia. The guest list included potential investors, business partners, and family friends. Family friends who had been told we'd suffered financial ruin. The email referenced catering deposits and venue reservations totaling over $10,000. For a family supposedly remortgaging their house to stay afloat, they certainly had money to spare for Adam's business celebration. Attached to the email was the formal invitation. At the bottom, in elegant script, hosted by Richard and Donna Thompson, proud investors in the future of digital marketing. Proud investors. Using my education fund. The final crushing detail was a note from my mother to the event planner. Please ensure the champagne is premium quality. This represents years of careful planning and sacrifice, and we want the celebration to reflect that. Years of careful planning and sacrifice indeed. My years, my sacrifice. As I sat there staring at the evidence of their deception, something shifted inside me. The hurt began to crystallize into resolve. If my parents and brother saw me as nothing more than a financial resource to be redirected at will, then I needed to protect myself. No one else would. The launch party for Nexus Marketing Solutions was scheduled at the Franklin Hotel in downtown Philadelphia, one of the city's most prestigious venues. According to the invitation, it would begin at 7 in the evening, business attire required. I wasn't formally invited, of course, but that wouldn't stop me. I called in sick to work that day, something I'd never done without legitimate illness. The irony wasn't lost on me that my first act of deception came in response to years of being deceived. Rather than my usual professional attire or casual clothes, I selected an outfit I'd bought for a friend's birthday but never worn a black cocktail dress with a subtly different neckline than my usual style. I styled my hair differently, curling it instead of my usual straight look, and applied makeup more dramatically than my typical natural appearance. The final touch was a pair of fashion glasses with clear lenses. It wasn't an elaborate disguise, but combined with my changed appearance and the fact that no one would expect to see me there, it should be enough to avoid immediate recognition in a crowded room. I arrived at the Franklin Hotel 30 minutes after the event began. The registration table was already unmanned, the staff having moved inside to tend to guests. I walked in confidently, nodding at the servers as if I belonged. The ballroom was transformed for the occasion, with Nexus Marketing Solutions projected on the walls alongside animated graphics of the company's services. At least 60 people mingled around high-top tables and a central bar, many already engaged in animated business discussions. I spotted Adam immediately holding court near a demonstration table with a laptop displaying the company's prototype software. He looked confident, gesturing broadly as he explained features to a small group of interested potential investors. My parents flanked him like proud sentries, my father occasionally clapping potential investors on the back while my mother charmed the wives. Taking a champagne flute from a passing server, I positioned myself near enough to overhear their conversations without being conspicuous, pretending to text on my phone. The initial funding came together remarkably smoothly, my father was saying to a gray-haired man in an expensive suit. We had set aside a significant education fund for our daughter, but realized Adam's business venture represented a much more promising investment opportunity. Redirecting Julia's college fund was the easiest decision we've made, he continued, unaware I was within earshot. Why pay outrageous tuition when we could invest in our family's future instead? The investor nodded appreciatively. Smart move. Those university costs are highway robbery these days. My mother added, Julia will understand eventually. She's disappointed about Wharton now, but once Nexus takes off, the returns will far exceed what any degree could provide. My hand tightened around the champagne flute as I continued to eavesdrop, moving between conversation groups like a ghost. Adam was even more explicit when speaking to his former college roommate. Dude, can you believe it? My parents dumped my sister's entire college fund into my startup. $85,000 just like that, he snapped his fingers, grinning. Jules is pretty pissed, but she'll get over it. She's taking one for the team without even knowing how big this is going to be. Your sister was the smart one in school, right? His friend asked. The one always getting academic awards and stuff. Adam waved dismissively. Book smarts, that's all. I've got the real-world business instincts. Besides, she's a girl. She'll probably just get married in a few years anyway. What's the point of an expensive degree then? I nearly dropped my glass. The casual sexism stunned me almost as much as the callous dismissal of my academic achievements. Later, I overheard my mother speaking with her best friend Susan, whose daughter had been in my graduating class. Between us, my mother confided, voice slightly slurred from Champagne Girls. Don't need expensive degrees the way boys do. Men have to support families. Julia is bright enough to find success without Wharton. But she worked so hard for that acceptance, Susan replied, sounding confused. Harder than most kids I know. And we're very proud, my mother insisted. But Adam's business is the priority right now. It's a guaranteed return on investment, while education is so speculative these days. I'd heard enough. More than enough. The pretense of a market crash had been hard enough to swallow, but hearing them openly discuss redirecting my future as if it were their right alone was unbearable. Something inside me snapped. All the hurt, confusion, and betrayal crystallized into cold clarity. I removed the fashion glasses, walked directly to where my family stood with their most important investors, and cleared my throat loudly. "Excuse me," I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet group. "I believe there's been some misrepresentation about the funding of this venture." The color drained from my mother's face. "Julia, what are you doing here?" "Apparently witnessing my family lie not only to me but to potential investors," I replied calmly. "I thought business ethics required transparency about funding sources." Adam stepped forward, attempting damage control with a forced laugh. "My little sister, everyone. Always the joker. Julia, this is a private business function." "A function funded by my stolen college tuition," I said, not breaking eye contact with him. "Tuition that was accumulated over 16 years, specifically for my education." My father gripped my elbow. "Julia, you're making a scene. Let's discuss this privately." "Why?" I asked loud enough for nearby groups to hear. "You've been discussing it publicly all evening, bragging about it actually." Several investors exchanged uncomfortable glances. One woman in a blue dress frowned, murmuring to her partner. "You don't understand business," Adam hissed. "I understand fraud," I replied, "and misrepresentation to investors." That word fraud sent a visible ripple through the gathering. My father's grip on my arm tightened painfully. "That's enough," he growled. "We're leaving. Now." As he pulled me toward the exit, I called over my shoulder. "Ask them about the market crash they invented. Ask them why they're hosting an $80,000 launch party if they're remortgaging their house to stay afloat." Outside in the hotel corridor, my parents exploded. "How dare you embarrass us like that?" my mother seethed. "After everything we've done for you, done for me, you stole my future and lied to my face about it." My father paced the hallway. "You have no idea the damage you might have just caused. Those investors could walk away now." "Good, they should know what kind of people they're dealing with." Adam burst through the door. "What the hell, Julia? You might have just tanked my entire company before it even launched." "Your company built on stolen money," I shot back. "It wasn't stolen," my father insisted. "Those accounts were legally in our names." "Then why lie about a market crash? Why not just tell me you were taking my college fund for Adam's business?" No one had a good answer. We continued the argument at home, where my parents finally admitted the truth. There had been no market crash. They had deliberately transferred my college fund into Adam's business venture, believing it represented a better return on investment than my education. "We did the math," my father explained, as if that justified everything. "Even if you got your Wharton degree and landed a top finance job immediately, it would take years to recoup the investment in tuition. But Adam's business plan shows potential returns of 300% in the first 18 months. If it succeeds," I pointed out, "which most startups don't." "This one will," Adam insisted. "You've seen the business plan yourself. You said it was solid. I helped you create a plan that could be presented to investors. That doesn't mean I think your execution will be flawless, or that market conditions will cooperate." My mother tried a different approach. "Sweetheart, we always taught you to think about the family as a whole. This benefits all of us in the long run." "So would my Wharton degree," I countered. "But you didn't consider that valuable enough, did you?" As the argument circled endlessly, I realized something important. They genuinely believed they were justified. In their minds, they had made a sound business decision, not betrayed their daughter's trust and stolen her future. That's when I made a decision of my own. Pulling out my phone, I stopped the recording I'd been making since entering the launch party. My family stared at me in shock. "What are you doing?" Adam demanded. "Protecting myself," I replied, tucking the phone away safely. Since clearly no one else in this family will. The morning after the launch party confrontation, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. The shock and emotional devastation had burned away, leaving a steely resolve in their place. I was done being a victim of my family's manipulation. It was time to reclaim control of my future. My first step was to meet with Margot, the financial advisor at my bank who had mentored me. I requested a personal appointment during my lunch break and brought copies of what limited documentation I had regarding my college fund. "This is a complicated situation," Margot said after I explained everything. "On one hand, if the accounts were legally in your parents' names, they had the right to withdraw and use the funds. On the other hand, if these were specific education accounts, like 529 plans, there are tax implications for using them for non-educational expenses. What are my options?" She thought carefully before answering. I can't officially advise you on legal matters, but I would recommend consulting with an attorney who specializes in family financial disputes. There may be recourse, especially if you can prove the funds were explicitly designated for your education. Margot provided a referral to Catherine Delaney, an attorney she knew personally who offered free initial consultations. I called from the bank and secured an appointment for the following afternoon. That evening, I began meticulously documenting everything. I created a timeline of events, starting with early childhood memories of my parents discussing Julia's college fund through to the recent confrontation. I gathered birthday cards from relatives with notes about contributions to my education fund. I collected screenshots of text messages where my parents mentioned the college account. Most importantly, I secured the audio recording from the launch party on multiple devices and cloud storage accounts. My appointment with Catherine Delaney proved even more hopeful than I anticipated. While your parents did have legal control of the accounts, she explained there's a concept called constructive trust that might apply here. If money was specifically designated for your education, and this was clearly communicated over many years, you may have a claim even if your name wasn't on the accounts. What would that mean practically, I asked. It means we could potentially file for an injunction to freeze the business assets that came from your college fund until the matter is resolved. At minimum, we could send a formal demand letter that might motivate your parents to reconsider their actions. The consultation gave me valuable information, but I wasn't ready to take legal action just yet. I needed more security and independence first. That evening, I called my Aunt Tessa, my father's sister, who lived in Philadelphia. She and my father had a strained relationship, mainly because she had often called him out on his preferential treatment of Adam. "I wish I could say I'm surprised," she said after I explained the situation. "Your father did something similar to me when we were younger. Our parents left us each money for education, but he convinced them to give him my portion for his first business venture. It failed within a year." "I had no idea," I said, genuinely shocked. "History repeats itself," she said with a sigh. "Listen, I have a spare bedroom in my condo. If you need a place to stay while sorting this out, you're welcome here." Her offer provided the security I needed to move forward with my plan. I thanked her and promised to stay in touch about my next steps. The following day, I visited the financial aid office at Wharton. I explained that my family financial situation had unexpectedly changed and asked about additional scholarship opportunities or emergency aid. The advisor was sympathetic, but explained that most additional funds for the upcoming year had already been allocated. However, she added, given your exceptional academic record, I would recommend applying for the Peterson Business Leadership Scholarship. The deadline is next Friday, and it could cover up to 70% of your remaining tuition. I spent the weekend working on the scholarship application, pouring my heart into the personal essay about overcoming obstacles to achieve educational goals. Without explicitly mentioning my family's betrayal, I wrote about learning financial independence the hard way and developing resilience in the face of unexpected challenges. Meanwhile, I continued building my case. I contacted my grandparents, who confirmed they had contributed to my college fund, with the explicit understanding that the money was from my education. They provided copies of checks they had written over the years with Julia's college fund written in the memo line. I also reached out to family friends who had witnessed my parents discussing my college fund at various gatherings over the years. Several were happy to provide statements confirming the long-standing designation of those funds for my education. 2 weeks after the launch party incident, I felt prepared to confront my parents with my findings. I had moved essential belongings to my aunt's condo but hadn't officially told my parents I was moving out. I wanted leverage in the conversation to come. I arranged to meet them at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown, knowing they would be less likely to cause a scene in public. I arrived early, setting up my laptop and organizing my documents. When they arrived, both looked tense. My mother's eyes were puffy from crying, while my father maintained his rigid business demeanor. "Thank you for meeting me," I began formally. "I've spent the past 2 weeks consulting with financial and legal experts about my situation." My father immediately became defensive. "If you're threatening legal action against your own family—" "I'm not threatening anything," I interrupted calmly. "I'm informing you of my findings so you can make an informed decision." I opened my laptop and showed them the documentation I'd gathered, the statements from family members and the legal options Catherine had outlined. Based on the concept of constructive trust and the clear designation of these funds for my education over many years, I have grounds to file for an injunction that would freeze business assets derived from my college fund, I explained. Keeping my voice steady and professional, my parents exchanged worried glances. You would do that to your brother's business, my mother asked, sounding genuinely shocked. To your family? I didn't create this situation, I reminded her. I'm simply responding to it. My father leaned forward. Julia, be reasonable. Even if you tied up those funds in legal proceedings, it could take months or years to resolve. You'd miss your enrollment deadline. I'm aware of the timeline issues, I replied, which is why I've already taken steps to secure my education independently. I showed them the Peterson Scholarship application and explained that I had also applied for several private student loans as a backup plan. Their expressions shifted from defensive to surprised. You did all this on your own, my father asked. I had to. You taught me I couldn't count on my family to support my education. My mother reached for my hand, which I carefully moved away. Sweetheart, we never meant to hurt you. We truly believed Adam's business was the best investment for everyone. An investment you made with my future, without my knowledge or consent, while lying to my face about it, I replied. That's not a misunderstanding. It's a betrayal. I closed my laptop and looked them both in the eye. I'm prepared to move forward with legal action, but I would prefer a resolution that doesn't involve courts. My terms are simple: restore my college fund, or I will pursue all available legal remedies and make sure every investor in Adam's company knows exactly how their startup capital was acquired. That's blackmail, my father said, though his voice lacked conviction. Its consequences, I corrected, something this family seems to have forgotten about. As they began to protest further, my phone chimed with an email notification. I glanced down and froze, reading the message twice to make sure I understood correctly. A slow smile spread across my face as I looked up at my parents. It seems this discussion may be moot, I said, turning my phone to show them the email. I've just been awarded the full Peterson Business Leadership Scholarship. Combined with my merit scholarship, it covers 90% of my Wharton tuition. The shock on their faces was almost worth everything I'd been through. I've also been offered a paid internship with Hamilton Financial Group that will cover my living expenses during the school year. I continued enjoying their stunned expressions. This wasn't entirely true yet, but I had advanced to the final round of interviews and felt confident about my chances. My father's business mask cracked slightly. Julia, that's remarkable. Yes, I agreed. It turns out Wharton values my potential more than my own family does. My mother began to cry quietly. We made a terrible mistake. Yes, you did. And you've lost my trust in the process. I gathered my documents and stood to leave. I'll be staying with Aunt Tessa while I prepare for university. I've already moved most of my things. You're moving out. My mother looked devastated. Please, we can work this out. I'm not closing the door on our relationship, I clarified. But I need space and time to heal from this betrayal, and I need to know I'm safe from further financial manipulation. As I walked away from that coffee shop, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and triumph. I hadn't wanted things to reach this point, but I was proud of how I'd handled myself. For the first time since discovering their betrayal, I felt in control of my future again. That evening, I received notification that I had indeed secured the internship with Hamilton Financial Group. The position would provide valuable experience in investment analysis while covering my living expenses during school. When I called Aunt Tessa to share the news, she insisted on taking me out to celebrate. To independence, she toasted raising her glass at dinner, and to showing the Thompson men that the women in this family are forces to be reckoned with. I clinked my glass against hers, finally allowing myself to feel genuine happiness about my future once more. The weeks following my confrontation with my parents were surprisingly quiet. They made several attempts to contact me, leaving voicemails that evolved from defensive justifications to hesitant apologies. I responded with brief texts, making it clear I needed space to process everything before considering reconciliation. Living with Aunt Tessa proved to be a blessing beyond just housing. Her condo in Philadelphia was closer to Wharton, allowing me to visit campus and begin connecting with future classmates. More importantly, her perspective, as someone who had experienced similar treatment from my father, helped me understand the generational patterns at play in our family. Your grandfather was the same way with your father, she explained one evening as we shared dinner on her balcony overlooking the city. Endless resources for his business ventures, but when I needed support for my education, suddenly money was tight. How did you manage? I asked. Much like you're doing now, she said, with a proud smile. I found scholarships, worked through school, and built my own success. Your grandmother secretly helped when she could, but Grandpa controlled the finances. Aunt Tessa had built a successful career in architectural design, eventually starting her own firm that specialized in sustainable commercial spaces. Her independence was inspiring. 3 weeks after moving out, I received an unexpected call from my grandmother. Julia, have you seen the news about your brother's company? She asked without preamble. I hadn't. Between preparing for university and working extra shifts at the bank to build my savings, I'd been deliberately avoiding anything related to Nexus Marketing Solutions. A quick internet search revealed what Grandma was referring to. Following the scene I'd caused at the launch party, several investors had indeed pulled back, requesting additional due diligence on the company's financing. One investor had apparently raised concerns about ethical funding practices, which prompted others to ask more questions. According to a local business journal, Nexus Marketing Solutions was facing a funding crisis just weeks after its public launch. I felt a complex mix of emotions, vindication, but also a twinge of regret that things had escalated to this point. I had wanted justice, not destruction. That evening, my phone rang with Adam's number. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. What do you want, Adam? His voice lacked its usual confident swagger. We need to talk, Jules. In person. It's important. I'm not interested in being manipulated or guilt-tripped. No manipulation, he promised. Just, please. Coffee tomorrow. My treat. He attempted a weak joke. Though I might need to use a coupon at this rate. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him the following afternoon at a cafe equidistant between our locations. Adam arrived looking distinctly different from the triumphant CEO I'd last seen at the launch party. His expensive watch was absent, his designer clothes replaced with a simple button-down and jeans. Most notably, the smug confidence was gone from his expression. Thanks for coming, he said, sliding into the seat across from me with a coffee he'd already purchased for himself. No coupon humor this time. I ordered your usual. He pushed a vanilla latte toward me. What's this about, Adam? He sighed deeply. The company's in trouble. After your appearance at the launch, 3 major investors pulled out completely. 2 others are demanding additional verification of our funding sources before proceeding. I sipped my latte without responding. Dad's trying to find replacement investors, but word has spread in local business circles. He looked up at me with a mixture of resentment and reluctant respect. You really did a number on us, sis. I simply told the truth, I pointed out. If the truth about your funding sources scares away investors, perhaps that suggests something about the ethics of those sources. He flinched slightly. Yeah, well, that's partly why I wanted to talk. I've been doing some thinking. He fidgeted with his coffee cup. I didn't realize until recently that Dad never actually told you about the plan to use your college fund for my startup. I assumed you knew and had agreed. You thought I agreed to give up Wharton for your social media marketing app. When you put it that way, it sounds ridiculous, he admitted. But Dad presented it to me as a family decision. He said the fund was always meant as an investment in whichever child showed the most promising return. I couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped. And they decided that was you. The college dropout with 3 failed business attempts against my perfect GPA and Wharton acceptance. Adam's face flushed. That's not fair. College isn't the only path to success. Of course it isn't, I agreed. But it was my chosen path, and the fund was explicitly created for my education. For 16 years it was Julia's college fund, not whichever child impresses us most fund. He was quiet for a moment. I'm starting to see that. Another long pause. Look, I'm not here to defend what happened. I'm here because I want to make it right. Skepticism must have shown on my face because he quickly continued. I'm restructuring the company, scaling back our initial launch plans to something more sustainable with the remaining investment capital. If and when we become profitable, my first priority will be to repay your college fund in full. That could take years, I pointed out, and most startups fail. I know. Which is why I've already spoken to Mom and Dad about selling their vacation property to restore at least part of your fund immediately. This genuinely surprised me. My parents loved their small lake house in the Poconos. They'd purchased it 5 years ago as their eventual retirement dream. They agreed to that. Adam nodded. After everything fell apart at the launch party and you moved out, it hit them hard, Jules. Especially Mom. She's been a mess. I think they're finally realizing what they've done. I wanted to maintain my anger, to hold on to the justified resentment that had propelled me forward these past weeks. But something in Adam's demeanor seemed genuinely changed. Why the sudden change of heart? I asked, still suspicious. He looked down at his coffee. Remember Terry Wilson from high school? He was at the launch party, heard everything. Afterward, he pulled me aside and asked if I really thought it was okay to build my future by destroying my sisters. Said he couldn't respect anyone who would do that. Adam's voice grew quieter. He was my best friend since 6th grade, and now he won't return my calls. Social consequences were finally reaching my family. Their actions, long protected by privacy and family loyalty, were now visible to their community. It's not just Terry, Adam continued. Dad's colleagues at work have been cold to him. Mom said several of her teacher friends have been asking pointed questions about why you suddenly disappeared from family social media posts. While part of me felt satisfied by this accountability, another part recognized that destroying my family wouldn't repair what had been broken. What exactly are you proposing? I asked carefully. First, a genuine apology. I was entitled and selfish, and I'm sorry. He met my eyes directly for the first time. Second, a binding agreement that any profits from Nexus will go toward repaying your college fund before any other distributions. Third, Mom and Dad will sell the lake house and transfer those funds to you immediately. It wasn't everything, but it was significant. More important than the money was the acknowledgement of wrongdoing and the concrete steps toward making amends. I'll consider it, I said finally. But I need everything in writing reviewed by my attorney. Adam nodded, seeming relieved rather than offended by my caution. Absolutely. Whatever you need to feel secure in this. As we parted ways, I felt the first small thaw in the ice that had formed around my heart. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of a path toward it. 2 days later, I received an email from Wharton's Career Development Office. My internship performance had impressed Hamilton Financial Group so much that they were featuring me in their campus recruitment materials as an example of exceptional student talent. The email included a mock-up of a brochure with my photo and a brief profile highlighting my analytical skills and financial aptitude. When I forwarded the email to Aunt Tessa, she called me immediately. "We need to frame this," she declared. My niece, the financial whiz kid, her pride in my accomplishments was a balm to my wounded spirit after years of having my achievements overshadowed by Adam's needs and dreams. That weekend, my parents requested a meeting. Following Aunt Tessa's advice, I agreed, but asked to meet at Catherine Delaney's office with her present. If they were serious about making amends, they would agree to these terms. They did. Saturday morning found us all seated in Catherine's conference room. My parents looked diminished somehow. My father's usual commanding presence subdued my mother's perfect appearance, slightly frayed at the edges. "Thank you for meeting with us," my father began formally. "We've prepared a proposal that we hope will begin to make amends for our breach of trust." Catherine nodded for him to continue. He slid a folder across the table. "We've listed our lake house property and expect to net approximately $120,000 from the sale. We intend to transfer the entire amount to a trust for Julia's education that she will control independently." My mother added, "We've also drawn up new wills that create an equal distribution between Adam and Julia, correcting the previous arrangement that favored Adam's business interests." Catherine reviewed the documents while I maintained a neutral expression, though inside I was stunned by the extent of their proposed amends. "These terms are quite favorable," Catherine confirmed. "The educational trust in particular provides solid protection for your academic future." My father cleared his throat. "There's one more thing." He pulled out a separate document. "This is Adam's formal agreement to prioritize repayment of the original college fund amount from any profits generated by Nexus Marketing. It's been reviewed by our business attorney and is legally binding." I looked at my parents, really looked at them for the first time since discovering their betrayal. The regret in their eyes seemed genuine, their postures humble rather than defensive. "Why this change of heart?" I asked. "Is it just because you face social consequences?" My mother wiped away a tear. "That was the wake-up call, yes. But the real change came when we saw what our actions had cost us, not socially, but personally. We lost your trust. We damaged our family. And for what a business venture that may or may not succeed, We forgot our values, my father admitted quietly. We convinced ourselves we were making a sound investment decision, but we were really just continuing a pattern of favoring Adam that we've been blind to for years. Catherine gave me a subtle nod, indicating she believed their offer was solid and their contrition appeared genuine. I appreciate these steps, I said carefully. They help secure my education and future. But rebuilding trust will take more than financial arrangements. We know, my mother said. We're ready to do whatever it takes, including family counseling, if you're willing. We don't expect immediate forgiveness, Julia. Just a chance to make things right over time. For the first time in months, I felt a genuine sense that healing might be possible, that my family could eventually become something stronger and healthier than it had been before. I'm willing to try, I said finally. The relief that washed over their faces was palpable. As we concluded the meeting, my father hesitated, then asked, Would you consider coming to Sunday dinner tomorrow? At the house, Adam will be there too. I glanced at Catherine, who gave me a supportive smile. Yes, I decided. I think that would be a good first step. As I left the office, my phone buzzed with an email notification. The subject line made me stop in my tracks: Hamilton Financial Group Summer Analyst Program Offer. Opening it with trembling fingers, I read that based on my exceptional internship performance, they were offering me a position in their highly competitive summer analyst program, typically reserved for students who had completed at least 2 years of university education. The universe seemed to be confirming that I was on the right path, that my faith in my own abilities had been justified all along. That evening, I shared the news with Aunt Tessa over celebratory dinner. To my brilliant niece, she toasted, who turned betrayal into triumph through sheer determination and intelligence. I raised my glass in return. And to the aunt who showed me that independence isn't just about money, but about standing firmly in your own worth. As we clinked glasses, I felt the final pieces of my future clicking into place, not because of my family's resources, but because of my own resilience and capabilities. 1 year later, I stood at the podium in Wharton's undergraduate seminar room, looking out at a sea of attentive faces. The event, Financial Ethics in Family Business, had drawn a capacity crowd of students and faculty members. Financial betrayal is particularly devastating when it comes from those we trust most. I explained, my voice steady and confident. My experience taught me that financial independence isn't just about having money, but about having control over your financial destiny. In the audience, I spotted Aunt Tessa giving me an encouraging nod. Beside her sat my parents, their expressions a mixture of pride and lingering regret. In the back row, somewhat surprisingly, was Adam. The past year had transformed all of us in ways I couldn't have imagined during those dark days of discovery and confrontation. My first semester at Wharton had been everything I'd hoped for academically. The Peterson Scholarship covered 90% of my tuition, while the proceeds from my parents' lake house sale remained largely untouched in my educational trust, providing security for graduate studies if I chose that path. The Hamilton Financial Group internship had evolved into a prestigious part-time position during the school year, where I helped analyze investment opportunities for their emerging markets fund. My supervisor, Veronica Hayes, had become a valued mentor, guiding my professional development with the same care Margot had shown at the bank. My family's journey had been more complicated. Adam's startup, Nexus Marketing Solutions, struggled after losing key investors. 6 months in, he was forced to downsize dramatically, letting go of most of the staff he'd hired with such confidence at the launch. The failure humbled him in unexpected ways. Instead of blaming me for the company's struggles, he took responsibility for his own shortcuts and ethical compromises. He enrolled in business courses at the local community college, determined to learn the fundamentals he had previously dismissed as unnecessary. Most surprisingly, he'd started working with a nonprofit that taught financial literacy to high school students. I'm trying to make sure other kids don't make the mistakes I made, he told me when he first volunteered. Or have parents who make the mistakes ours did. My parents had followed through on their promises. Beyond selling the lake house, they had committed to weekly family therapy sessions where we worked through years of unacknowledged favoritism and financial manipulation. The process was painful but necessary, revealing generational patterns that had shaped their parenting decisions without their full awareness. My father always favored me over your Aunt Tessa, Dad admitted during one particularly difficult session. I internalized the message that sons were the family's future. When I became a parent, I unconsciously continued that pattern. Mom had her own revelations. I was raised to believe education wasn't as important for girls. My parents discouraged me from pursuing teaching beyond my bachelor's degree. Without realizing it, I was projecting those limitations onto you, Julia. Understanding the origins of their behavior didn't excuse it, but it helped me contextualize their actions and begin the slow process of rebuilding trust. Our Sunday dinners, once filled with shallow conversation that centered around Adam's latest ventures, evolved into thoughtful discussions where everyone's achievements and challenges received equal attention. For the first time in my memory, my parents asked detailed questions about my classes and internship, showing genuine interest in my academic path. As I concluded my presentation at Wharton, I shared the most important lessons from my experience. Financial independence requires vigilance and education even within families. Trust should be verified, especially when significant assets are involved. And most importantly, your value is not determined by others' willingness to invest in you, but by your own determination to invest in yourself. The applause was gratifying, but the quiet pride on my family's faces meant even more. After the event, we gathered for dinner at my favorite Philadelphia restaurant. As we waited for our food, Adam raised his water glass in a toast. To Julia, he said, sincerely, who taught us all that true success comes from integrity, not shortcuts. My parents joined the toast, their eyes reflecting genuine remorse for past mistakes and hope for our future. I have news, I announced after we clinked glasses. Hamilton Financial Group has offered me a place in their executive training program after graduation. It's a 2-year program that includes international experience and mentorship from their top executives. Congratulations flowed freely without a hint of the jealousy or dismissal that would have accompanied such an announcement in the past. We're so proud of you, Mom said, reaching for my hand across the table. You've accomplished all this through your own merit and determination. Dad nodded agreement. You've shown more wisdom and maturity than we did, Julia. Your success is entirely your own. After dinner, Aunt Tessa and I walked together along the river while my parents and Adam headed back to their hotel. You know, she said thoughtfully, when you first came to me with this situation, I worried you might never reconcile with your family. I've seen financial betrayals destroy relationships permanently. There were moments I thought that would happen, I admitted, especially in the beginning when the pain was so raw. What changed? I considered her question carefully. I realized that holding on to anger while justified wasn't serving my future. And when they took concrete steps to make amends, not just with words but with actions that required real sacrifice, I saw the possibility of something better than what we had before. She squeezed my shoulder affectionately. You're wiser than I was at your age. It took me decades to reach a cordial relationship with your father after our family's financial conflict. I had a good example in you, I pointed out. You showed me how to stand my ground without becoming bitter. As we watched the sunset reflect on the water, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The betrayal had been devastating, but it had also been transformative. I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed, built networks of support beyond my family, and developed financial acumen that would protect me for a lifetime. Most importantly, I had learned that sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as painful lessons, and that intelligence coupled with integrity is a powerful combination that can overcome even the most profound betrayals. The family I had now wasn't perfect, but it was honest in a way it had never been before. The masks had fallen away, revealing flawed human beings capable of both terrible mistakes and genuine growth. Do you think you'll ever fully trust them again? Aunt Tessa asked as we turned to head back. Trust is being rebuilt day by day, I replied. But I'll never again be financially vulnerable to anyone, family included. That's not distrust, it's wisdom, she nodded approvingly. The best kind of wisdom learned through experience rather than hearsay. As I fell asleep that night in my apartment near campus, I felt a sense of peace that had been missing for so long. My future was secure not because my family protected it, but because I had learned to protect it myself. The path forward was clear, illuminated, not just by academic knowledge, but by hard-won personal wisdom about human nature, family dynamics, and the complex relationship between money and love. In the end, my parents' betrayal had given me something far more valuable than a college fund. It had given me the gift of true independence, the kind that comes from within and can never be taken away. What would you do if your family betrayed your trust with finances? Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against loved ones? Comment below with your thoughts and experiences. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more content about overcoming challenges and personal growth. Share with someone who might need to hear that standing up for yourself can lead to positive transformation. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength and wisdom on your own path to financial independence.